Sounds like the Liberal caucus is already falling apart. From ministers contradicting each other, to now apparently even reports of people getting out of meetings in tears.
That the Prime Minister will encounter. He's also experiencing challenges here in Ottawa within his own caucus, within his own office, because from all reports that this is a caucus that still has some level of disunity in it. This is a Prime Minister that still is having a hard time finding a chief of staff, and what does that mean about internal staffing? And even reports of people getting out of meetings, I guess, in tears because they're being taken to task for not being prepared enough for their meetings with the Prime Minister.
Oh, it sounds like he's actually holding his ministers to account, and they don't like that. On top of that, we have this CTV panel here absolutely tearing apart Mark Carney.
Let's start off with the greater political context, because the last time we spoke a few weeks ago, you had support for both the Liberals and the Conservatives remaining relatively strong, but ultra competitive still.
Absolutely. You know, the thing is, within the margin of error, 1 percentage point difference between the Liberals and the Conservatives. So yes, Mark Carney is the Prime Minister. Yes, he has the government, but he should be looking over his shoulder, because the reality is that for those Canadians that were supporting the Conservatives during the last federal election and wanted change, they are still with the Conservatives today, even with the trouble that Pierre Poilievre has had in terms of his personal riding. So, you know, the thing is very competitive and very tight. It's going to be interesting to see if anything happens in terms of the summer.
Yeah, so before we get to the summer, though, we've got 3 more weeks here, JD. This week it was very much focused on the throne speech. There'll be a series of days devoted to debating that. But there's lots of stuff they're promising. A tax cut, removing the federal barriers to internal trade, introducing legislation on completely changing the review process. That's just a few things. Can they get all that done?
Well, they will need the collaboration of the other parties in the House of Commons. And I don't think that anybody wants to give any gift to the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, the Bloc Québécois, the Conservative Party, or the NDP, even though they're not officially a party status. So Mr. Carney will have to learn how to navigate in those waters with a minority government. Plus, Mr. Carney is setting up high expectations himself by saying, I'm going to deliver. I'm going to deliver fast. Well, the expectations will be that he will deliver fast on the housing crisis, on reducing the cost of living, on delivering projects that are in the national interest. So he is, the expectations are set by himself. Now he's got to deliver, and the critical weeks will be next week when he meets the Premier.
Well, he wasn't able to deliver a budget quickly, so I doubt the rest of this is going to come as quick as he claims.
It'll be sort of legislative tests, Najud, about how fast the Prime Minister and his team can deliver. But it feels like a little bit of deja vu, because there have been promises in these areas made before, and we have all sat here and discussed how you can't build the houses overnight, for example. And if you look at the real estate market right now, things aren't going in the direction that any government would hope when it comes to supply. A whole host of things about transforming the economy. Like, again, these are things that you can't necessarily show Canadians proof of in the immediacy.
Well, and I think what I'm going to be paying attention to is that first minister's meeting, and it will influence and it will indicate how much he can get done and how things play out in Parliament. So the Prime Minister is expected to brief the premiers on this legislation that would fast-track projects, remove interprovincial barriers, and we're already seeing pushback from Indigenous groups that are saying, hey, this doesn't fly with us, and this comes on the heels of legislation in Ontario and BC to try to fast-track projects that were not well received by Indigenous communities. And so how Mr. Carney navigates this First Minister's meeting and that backlash, and how he can find the right line to walk between trying to promote these projects while also not creating a political crisis or a legal crisis maybe with these projects, will really affect his credibility on being able to transform the economy, and that in turn will play out in Parliament as well.
You know, the other thing that's quite interesting is he's putting dates on things. We haven't seen that very often. It's like the guy's got a stopwatch, right? Here's what I'm going to do today. Here's what I'm going to do tomorrow. And you know what? I know we can see the House of Commons. It's not a swamp. I know there's a hole there, but it's hard to get things done sometimes. He is in a minority position. Even on issues like energy, he needs the cooperation of the provinces, Indigenous peoples, all types of different stakeholders. It's going to be interesting to see whether is he setting himself up for disappointment by having these dates. Because, you know, the thing is that, yes, there is a sense of urgency, but not only does he have to deliver, but now he has to deliver on a timeline that he himself has set.
Well, Carney dropped a massive spending plan with very few details, and the Conservatives have already come out and said that they are fully against this. In a time when people can't afford anything, Carney wants to spend $500 billion. And it sort of sounds like he thinks he can just get away with whatever he pleases, and that he doesn't need the approval of the rest of the House.
It is rare, right? Like in a political arena, we are not used to seeing, in general, the rule is set the expectations low so that you can over-deliver. It's the complete converse of that right now. But you have to imagine the Prime Minister is cognizant of that. It seems like he has a shorter view in that, he's not interested necessarily in re-election 5 times. He probably is, but I'm saying he seems very focused on like the here and the now, and not necessarily completely the political utility of everything.
Absolutely. And Mr. Carney has been around, the business of, leading the Bank of Canada, for example, or the Bank of England. So he knows the policies, how it is, put forward and how it is put in motion. So I think he recognizes that he's got some hurdles to overcome. And you're right in saying that, one of the most successful Prime Ministers, Jean Chrétien, used to low expectations and over deliver. He did that on balancing the budget, for example, and getting also the 3 majorities in a row. But Mr. Carney, if he plays his cards well, could be a transformative Prime Minister, as was Brian Mulroney, depending on the support that he gets from some people he can't control, like the provinces, Indigenous people, and also municipalities and business groups. If you may create a national corridor to bring in new projects, but if you don't have the private investment, you're still stuck with an empty corridor. So that's a big gamble that he's taking.
Very much so. And I think, look, we call Brian Mulroney a transformative Prime Minister now, Najud, but I lived through, and I was young, but I remember the arguments at my kitchen table, my Greek father and my German mother fighting back and forth, and the policies at the time that proved to be transformative were not popular. And yes, he was able to get reelected because of a whole host of things, and ultimately, with the passage of time, they were recognized for the value that they did create for our country. But it'll be interesting to see if there is that resistance, the way in which Mr. Carney, the Prime Minister, navigates that.
Yeah, ultimately, we don't really know right now how the Prime Minister is going to move forward with his agenda. It's, again, he's acting like
how is missing.
Yes, he's acting like he has a majority government. He does not. A lot of the things that he wants to accomplish are not just up to the stroke of a pen from the federal government. It involves provinces, it involves Indigenous communities, it involves the courts. And so there's a lot of hurdles ahead in terms of accomplishing that agenda. And again, right now, it's really unclear what the path forward is. And so I think the Prime Minister has set very high expectations. And I think in turn, he has turned to his staff and the public service and be like, these are the expectations. This is what we've promised. And so you better deliver. That sounds great. But the reality is that this isn't the Bank of Canada and it isn't Brookfield. And there's a lot of
it's government. Yeah.
Exactly. And so there's a political dimension to this that I still don't think that he has encountered before in the way he is right now.
Sounds like he's struggling to be a leader, keeping his ministers in line, and when he does try to keep them in line, they end up having mental breakdowns. Question period on Monday is going to be very interesting. I wonder if Carney will even show up.
I bring that up to people, let's say, who are in and around the machinery of government right now. They point to COVID, and how fast those programs, but does anyone remember the Auditor General reports that came out that said like $34 billion just disappeared into the air? Like they weren't laid out, or they didn't unfold in a way that was ultimately free from error and mass waste and big issues.
Well, the big question is, has he done his homework? If he's done his homework on these big files and has already been talking to the premiers about potential projects, then he can succeed. Or alternatively, is this kind of like the guy who's leading the hockey team and he's sitting in the room and he's still figuring out who's going to be playing in what position, but he's told everybody, oh, in the first 5 minutes of the second period, we will be up to 0, knowing that the roster isn't even in place.
Mr. Carney wants to surf on the crisis. The current relationship with the United States is the crisis that he wants to surf on and bring about transformative changes to Canada. But will this crisis, the kind of momentum that has provided to the Prime Minister, will it last? That remains to be seen. And he has also to engage with the United States to renegotiate the kind of free trade deal we want with the United States and the security deal. So on many fronts, Mr. Carney has set up some high expectations.
JD,
but will he deliver that?
in the weekly tracking on the top national issue of concern, Trump is going down, healthcare and jobs are going up.
It feels like that too. It definitely does. Last word to you. Last 30 seconds, Najid.
Yeah, I think that with time, people's attention is going to start turning elsewhere in the economy. Housing, affordability, healthcare, all of these issues are not going away. And so the wave that helped the Prime Minister get into the office is not going to last long, I presume. And so it'll be interesting to see how, if he can pivot and actually turn to address those issues.
And that's exactly it. He has promised all of this without confirmation from premiers, other parties, and things are still going to have to be approved through the Senate as well. He's promised a lot, and with his current cabinet and caucus, I just simply do not think they can get it done. Anyway, I want to know what you think down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are new, and thank you very much for watching.